Today on the channel, we're going to talk about some of my favorite concert experiences from back in the 80s and 90s and why I think concert experiences were better back in the day than they are now. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about my favorite concert experiences from the 80s and 90s and why I felt like those experiences are better than what we get today in today's world in concerts and ticket prices and value for the dollar. Now don't get me wrong, this isn't a video to complain about concerts and the economy and just things like that in general. I guess maybe it may touch on that a little bit, but I wanted to share with you my favorite concert experiences, and hopefully in the comments you guys can tell me about your best concert experiences, why, where they were, you know, when they were, what tour it was. I just love to talk about this kind of stuff. You know, I am a Gen Xer and I grew up at the in the middle of the 80s metal era, and I was coming of age during the 90s grunge era, so I mean I experienced a lot of the hair metal, and I experienced a lot of the really famous grunge and alternative bands in the 90s as a very young adult, and I was very impressionable, and that's one of the reasons why I play music to this day, and which carved a lot of my of what I do out of what am I trying to say? It made me who I am today, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it. So anyway, let me preface this by saying that, you know, first of all, yeah, concerts are extremely expensive nowadays, just about everywhere that you go. If you go to a major show, that is. I think my favorite shows that I go to nowadays are local clubs and small venues where you can still get tickets for really good bands for, you know, under 90 bucks, maybe 40 to 60 dollars. There's a place in Nashville. I live in Nashville. There's a place called Marathon Music City Works, East Side Bowl, the Cobra, places like that where there's a lot of really good bands that come in and you can get affordable tickets, and it's very intimate, personal, and there's kind of a scene. And that adds a lot of value to concerts, and it makes it fun, because concerts should be an experience. It should be where you hang out with your friends, you talk about it the next day, where you get excited about it for a few weeks to come. You know, I think that a lot of times with really large shows, the sizzle is actually more than the actual steak itself. I mean, you know, there's it's a lot more sizzle than steak, I guess, and the prices are crazy. What got me thinking about it really was Metallica is going to be in Nashville in the very beginning of May, and I was looking at tickets online, and everything on, of course, you know, this is not like a shock to me, but or anybody here on this channel. Everything that you go to look at on Ticketmaster are resale tickets. So everything on Ticketmaster for Metallica are people reselling tickets. So people are making money on tickets. They do this for every concert. So if you want a good seat for Metallica for one night, you're looking at $300 to $400 for a good seat, right? If you want a really bad seat, you're still looking at about $150, $160, and they play 2 nights. So if you have a friend, you know, say you want to take a girlfriend, or you and a buddy want to go or whatever, and you get good seats for $400 a piece, then that's 4 times 2, so $800 for one night. And if you go both nights, now you're looking at $1,600 for 2 nights. I can't think of any concert in the world that I've ever been to that, even on this list I'm going to share with you of my favorite shows, I would ever pay $1,600 to go see. That is outrageous, and maybe I'm just getting old, but you know, I started thinking about that when I was looking at those tickets today, and I'd love to go see Metallica, but there is no way on earth that I'll pay $300 to $400 a ticket. I don't care who it is. If it was Paul McCartney, I wouldn't even pay that. I just wouldn't. There's just better things to do with my time and money. I've got a Solar guitar I want to buy. I've been looking at, and you know, those Metallica tickets would buy me a couple of those. So that's where my mind goes. I'm like, man, that would buy me a different guitar. It'd buy me this amp, or I could go to the beach. I could drive down to the coast for a couple nights, man, and eat some mahi-mahi tacos or something, right? The experience would be better. But anyway, so let's talk about it. First of all, back in the 80s, before social media, we had to rely on magazines like Guitar World, Guitar for the Practicing Musician, Cream, Hit Parader, you name it, all the magazines to give us information on our superheroes, our rock gods, our stars that we loved, and they were like larger than life, and MTV ruled the world, and MTV played a huge part in creating these iconic bands that everyone loves today. I mean, they really owe their careers, many of them, most of them, I should say, to MTV, because MTV was the foundation that really presented them across cable TV, across the entire, United States and eventually the world. I mean, it was kind of like internet for music, and there weren't very many bands in comparison today. So, MTV really promoted it, and you were so excited. I grew up in a small town. I grew up near Ithaca, New York, and there was a small venue there that the concerts would come to, and there wasn't a lot going on. So when these bands came to town, it was huge, and we planned ahead. It's like, Rats coming to the arena in June, and we'd be talking about this in like January. Did you get your Rat tickets, right? And then you would go down to, you'd have to call into, Ticketmaster, or you'd have to go to like one of the places in the mall that sold tickets, and if you got there early enough and stood in line, you could get good seats. It was first come, first serve, which really was fun. I mean, it created a buzz. There was a scene your friends were into it, and that makes the experience so much more enriching, because we're people and we need each other to interact, and we need each other to enjoy art. I mean, art is there for us to when I say art, I mean music in this sense. It's there for us to digest and listen to and analyze, and you're not going to like everything that you hear, but everyone's got different tastes, and your friends would get you into different bands, and you'd get them into different bands, and I was Team Van Halen, and I had other friends that were, Team Doc and George Lynch, and, we kind of became like opposing sides, this album was better, and this album was better than their record, and anyway, the scene was cool, and I think that played a huge part in why concerts were better, just because maybe the shows weren't necessarily better shows than they are today, musically or sonically. In some cases, I think they might be, but the whole vibe and atmosphere around waiting for the show, going to the show, the scene, the anticipation, that's part of it. That's part of the fun, what you're going to do after and before the show. And then you'd wear your concert shirt to school the next day or to work, and that was your proof that you went. And then you could, someone else would go and say, "Hey, that was a great show, man. Did you like Motley Crue?" And you'd be like, "Nah, man, I like the warm-up band better. Kix was cool. I never knew those guys were that great," or something like that. So anyway, my favorite shows from the 80s and 90s, in no specific order, I'd have to say, I will say my favorite show of all time was in 1993. I saw Van Halen, and Vince Neil opened for Van Halen. I think it was 93, and Vince Neil was on the Exposed tour, and Steve Stevens played guitar with Vince Neil, and Van Halen were at their absolute peak with Sammy Hagar, and that was a tremendous show. Both bands were so good, and the sound was amazing. And both bands were so energized. They were in their prime. I mean, they were all still, young musicians, and still had a lot of drive and energy. And I was in my very early 20s, so that was a great show. I remember going with one of my real good friends at the time, and we rushed the stage and got to go into the front row for Van Halen, and we were in front of Sammy and Eddie the entire show, and it was simply magic. And I don't know what we paid for those tickets, but I want to say it was probably around $75, $78 a piece, right? And our seats were around 16th row. So, you could do that. So times have changed. Another great show that I went to was, this one was interesting. I went to Alice Cooper, Raise Your Fist and Yell, and that was around 1988, I want to say. 88, 89, and he had the guitar player, I forget his name, he was real muscular, his guitar looked like a machine gun, and my friend and I were into horror movies and scary stuff, and we were really into Alice Cooper at the time because of the style of his music, and we didn't even know if he was still touring or playing, because without internet and things like that, you really couldn't look up stuff. And Alice wasn't getting a lot of publicity, but we found out he was coming to play, and we were shocked. We were like, man, we thought Alice Cooper was done. We went to see Alice Cooper, and we brought his. He had a little sister. My friend's little sister had a little doll, and we brought this doll to the show, and we had put white out in the eyes of the doll and made it look possessed. Yeah, it sounds weird, but we were young teenagers. And we brought the doll to the show, and he handed the doll up to Alice Cooper during $1 Billion Babies, and Alice Cooper wound up singing to the doll, and he stuck a sword in the doll, and he was walking around the stage with our doll on his sword, and then he threw a hatchet at it, and he cut the head off the doll, and we wound up getting the head of our doll back at the end of the show. We brought it to school the next day in a brown paper bag. It's crazy stuff. Again, when you're in your teens and early 20s, and even as an adult, these rock musicians were larger than life. You're an impressionable person, and they're just great experiences. And I think we lack a lot of that today. Another one of my favorite shows, I saw the David Lee Roth Eat 'Em and Smile tour, and I was introduced to a band named Tesla. Tesla was on the Mechanical Resonance tour, and Tesla absolutely blew me away. They were first, and then, of course, being a huge Steve Vai fan, and I had been watching Crossroads on multiple times on DVD, or not DVD, but VHS. And in the theater, I'd seen Crossroads, and I'd been playing Flexible, and had been playing Eat 'Em and Smile for months and months, and knew every single lick by heart in my head. And being a huge Van Halen fan and David Lee Roth fan, that show was just outstanding from a musician's perspective, and being a very young guitar player, and barely being able to play at that point in my life, and just seeing what Steve could do and his stage presence, and the way Dave controlled the audience, and Billy Sheehan, all those guys, man, Greg Bassinet, was it Brett Tuggle, was that his name, the keyboard player that passed? Man, what a great show. To this day, I look up stuff from time to time on YouTube of the Eat 'Em and Smile tour, and it does not disappoint. It was just a wicked, wicked show. I remember back in 1980, I want to say it was 1987, I saw the Boston Third Stage tour, and I really got into Boston around 1985, 86, really deep. Went back to Boston 1 and 2, and just was enamored with the writing and the classical influences that Tom brought to the music, and I really just fell in deep with Boston. And me and a girlfriend at high school, we went to go see the Third Stage tour, and of course Brad Delp was singing in the band, and Jim Mastia was on drums, and Gary Pyle on rhythm guitar and lead, and Tom, of course. I can't remember who was playing bass on that tour, but they played Third Stage from front to back. I remember at the end of the show they had a backdrop that came up that looked like a big pipe organ. That show was 3 hours long easily. It was phenomenal, so good. I've seen Boston only twice. I saw them maybe about 25 years after that, and it was good. But gosh, that Third Stage tour was phenomenal. And just the hype and the mystique around it, right? Again, lack of social media, lack of things always being in your face, and having just little tidbits of information, little bit spoon-fed to you at a time, and you had to search and find information and do a little bit more work on your own and dig into artists and really find out that information, I think helps create the scene. And in some cases, I think overexposure is a bad thing. And I think we get desensitized towards it. And then I think that's what causes a lot of these ticket brokers and places to, they sell the sizzle and not the steak. And, you get these places that are now selling, your memories, like, oh, I got to go see Metallica, or oh, I've got to go see Winger one last time, or I've got to go see, whatever band it is. I mean, even if it's a current band, whether it's Taylor Swift or Lady Gaga or, Foo Fighters or whatever band is on tour, it's just ridiculous. So anyway, I'm not trying to be negative. So another great show I went to go see was Paul McCartney. I saw him in the Off the Ground tour. I believe it was around 92. 93, I saw Off the Ground in Memphis. I think that was Paul McCartney's last tour he did with his band before the one he's been with now forever. He's got this, I don't want to say his new band. It's really not a new band. I mean, they've been his band probably for 30 years. But, I saw them with Linda McCartney was playing with them and his old band. And it was tremendous. It was at the Memphis Liberty Bowl at the time, and it sounded wonderful. And it's the only time I've ever seen McCartney. And we had good seats on the side, and that's the only concert I can ever think of that I was brought to tears at one point. It was very emotional, but it was wonderful to see Paul, and it was a great summer night, and great trip to Memphis from Nashville. Great memories with some really cool friends, and bought some cheap bootleg shirts in the parking lot that I still have. The bootleg shirts, they were white T-shirts with McCartney's image on the front playing his Hofner bass, and the T-shirts are kind of got a purple hue to them now because the print bled through the white shirt. But I don't care. I wore that shirt forever, and I keep all my old concert shirts. I should do a video of my concert T-shirts and show you all my old shirts I've still got from the 80s because I'm kind of a pack rat. Another great show. Got a couple more on my list I'll share with you, then I'll let you go. This video is getting kind of long. But I saw the Kiss reunion tour in 1996. I was always a Kiss fan since I was probably 8 years old. I was enamored with Kiss Meets the Phantom and the makeup and the blood. I mean, if you were a young boy in the 70s and you liked rock and roll and you didn't like Kiss, there was something wrong with you, because Kiss were larger than life. And I never got to see Kiss. I always liked Kiss to a degree in the 80s, without the makeup, but I always thought they paled in comparison to Van Halen and Def Leppard and some of the, White Snake, some of these huge bands. I always thought Kiss was kind of like, they sort of lost it. And I still kind of feel that way. But when they reunited in 96 with all 4 original members and put the makeup back on, I got to see them. And I went to the Knoxville, Tennessee show. And what a great, great show. The hype around that show was fantastic. And I remember before the show started, they had people dressed up as Gene Simmons and Ace and different members of the band in costume, and they would show up in sections of the arena, like you'd be looking up. It was before the show started. They're playing like AC/DC and music through the PA system, and well, then that Won't Get Fooled Again came on the PA, and then they had some of the Kiss imposters showing up in various parts of the arena, and you'd be like, oh, look, that's Gene. Oh, no, that's fake. Oh, that's Ace. Oh, no, it's not Ace. Why would he be up there? And then, it was Won't Get Fooled Again, right? And then when Roger Daltrey goes, yeah, the lights came down, and you knew you weren't going to get fooled again. You're going to finally see the real Kiss. That was outstanding. I wound up seeing Kiss 3 times on that. I saw him on Psycho Circus, and I saw him on the final farewell tour, whatever it was. That was not really their farewell tour, and that was cool. But none of them, the first reunion tour was the best. and I hold that very fond. It was great going with my friends. I went with my one of my drummer buddies, one of my old drummers, Keith. We went to that with his brother and had a great trip to Knoxville. We forgot our tickets. Keith forgot our tickets, and we got there, and the lady at the ticket booth was able to pull his history through his credit card information and print us out tickets. We didn't think we were going to be able to get in, man. We got to the show, and Keith was like, guys, I forgot our tickets. And we were so like, what? But we got in. What a trip. The last concert I'll share with you that's one of my favorites was I saw Twisted Sister around 84, 85, something like that, for Stay Hungry in upstate New York. And it was when, of course, We're Not Gonna Take It and I Want to Rock were big MTV videos, and I had yet to start playing guitar at that point in my life. And Twisted Sister were so good. It's hard to explain how good that band was and how passionate they were. And they came out throwing punches so hard, and it was so loud, but so powerful. And Dee was such a commanding singer. And being young and impressionable and being really my first show, I think that had a lot to do with it. But that's what made me decide ultimately, this is something I would like to do. I want to do this. Like, it changed my life forever. And all these years later, I'm friends with Eddie Ojeda, and he's a good buddy of mine. And it's just surreal for me now in my, later adult life to be buddies with one of my heroes. And I've told him, every time I see him, I tell him, man, you you changed my life, man. And I still don't think he believes me when I tell him, but it's the truth. And I'm going to see him soon in the next few days. More on that later. I've got some cool information I'm going to share on the channel soon about something coming up with Eddie and Billy Sheehan and a contest, and where you can meet everybody in Nashville if you're in the Nashville area. So stay tuned. But anyway, that's my favorite. Those are some of my favorite concerts. Why I feel like concerts were better back in the 80s and 90s. I think social media has put a lot of a damper on things nowadays. I think there's too much overexposure. I think ticket prices are out of control. Something's got to be done about these resellers and the bots. Bands aren't making the kind of money they should. Fans are getting ripped off. Bands can't really control it. Ticketmaster's a monopoly. And something's got to be done. And I wish there was a way that we could get back to having a local scene and people getting out and having fun with each other and hanging out and going to do things with each other more than just meeting remotely on chat or on camera or text. That's truly, in my opinion, is killing the art form and killing off music in many ways. I know that music will live on forever. Art will exist for eternity. But it sure would be nice if we could turn it around in a little bit different direction. So let me know, what are your favorite shows? Why? Do you agree with my opinions? Do you disagree? All opinions are welcome on the channel. Thanks for listening. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing. Comment below, and as always, have a great day. Peace out.